Hey everybody, today I'm going to dive into the comment section of some recent videos. This way I can answer some of your questions and also continue the conversation because you guys have added a lot to some of the things that I covered. So I'm going to start with the peony video because that's the one where I introduced you to a $150 peony. And boy, you guys had thoughts on that. You made some good observations as well, like this one from Garden Doodles, who notices that Corey sometimes contradicts himself. She writes, Corey says, this is a $150 peony. Who in their right mind would buy this? Also, Corey says, we bought 5. It's true, and I think I must do this frequently because Lisa Smith also noticed that Corey says, it's 9 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Also, Corey says, I'm wearing shorts. So, hey, when it's greenhouse time, I am in shorts because it easily gets 90 degrees in here. So that's my defense there. I love this time of year. I love being in the greenhouse. Anyway, but there were some other comments that came in. Like I really like this one from Elaine Hovenkamp, who is talking about the person who developed the peony that I talked about. It's the lowest choice peony. And she writes, the Lanings lived in Kalamazoo and my husband was friends with Chris and Lois's son. It was magical to visit the acres of peonies in bloom. When he could no longer do the work, he sold off the roots to growers all over the country. The family did save some and shared a few roots with us a few years ago. However, none were Lois's choice. So it's really nice to know somebody who actually knew this family, and it's great to know that, you know, like there's real people behind the development of these plants. They're not made in like these factories, or it's not like a lot of other things where it's just corporate. Like there are people who absolutely love these plants and they just, you know, really work and spend their life working on these things. And so I love the fact that someone knew them. Also, JC Linden wrote, the plant price has nothing to do with how special or different a plant is. She writes, I remember being at a local greenhouse who announced a sale on hostas, and I really have zero interest in them and could not understand why this place had some priced at more than $100 each. Most of their quart perennials were between $2.99 and $4.99, but the hostas were vastly more. Now, during the big sale, every hosta was only $10. I picked up one by looks only. I knew nothing about the different ones then. Some other shopper demanded to know where I had found that. I pointed to the other side of the greenhouse, saying that they are in alphabetical order. Oh, and then she ran and was so upset that there were no more. Did I really want the last one I was holding, or the one I was holding? She continues, I had not been sure when I picked it up, so I looked at the tag. It was called Paul's Glory and it was marked $100. After her reaction, I of course bought it for the sale price of $10. Honestly, if she hadn't had a fit, I might have just put it back. It was not that special. 3 years later, it was one being sold at the big box stores for only $3.99. Talk about coming down in special and rare status. And that's pretty common in the plant world. We saw it especially in houseplants in 2020, where these plants were, you know, $200 or whatever. And then the following year they were available at Home Depot. So it's interesting how that does, but it's amazing how the value kind of starts coming to the forefront for us. I think Super Woody Boy had a comment about that. I've seen this at a lower price. I want. And it is true, like when something is valued at a high price or they put a high price tag on it, suddenly when you see the sale price, you want it even more. Now, I will say that it can really vary. Like with peony, I mentioned the number of eyes that a peony has, and that can really determine how far along that peony is. And you know, we'll get a bigger peony faster if you have more eyes. So the one that I had has a lot of eyes, but you know, peony, you know, they're not that hard to grow. I hope the Lois's choice is an easy one to grow as well. So having one with less eyes, you know, might take a little longer to get up to size, but definitely worth doing that. So I don't know, I just thought I'd make sure and share that one with you. I made a comment about it possibly being difficult to grow peony in the South, but you guys from the South had come through. I had Terry Green write, hey, I grow peony in Oklahoma and adopts a lot, wrote Atlanta here, we grow peony left, right, and center here. So obviously they do grow all over the place. So maybe it's drier climates, I'm not sure. You'll find out at your local garden center if you can grow peony or not. Also had Sharifa write, thank you, Corey, for your videos. They make me smile. I laughed out loud when you whispered, it better be. And I whispered that when they said that this is a unique one or something like that, because man, at $150, it better be a really unique one. And she writes, I'm going to try a few peonies in my containers. I had no idea that was possible. Thank you. Now, again, it's not so common for people to grow peony in containers. And remember, peony bloom in the spring, so you're going to be relying on their foliage for the rest of the season. Also, some of the peony, like the flowers will flop, but although the foliage is quite attractive, so I'm guessing they look good. And I'm going to confirm that because Annetta Morrison wrote, All my peony, and I have at least 30, are in containers and they do just fine. I am in Scotland and our winters do go down to -6 or -10 degrees Celsius. Peony are such a resilient, hardy plant and so easy to grow and keep happy. And that is the thing about peony. They're one of those plants that they take very little from us and give us so much, especially in the springtime. And the foliage is nice. You can even use it in cut arrangements and all that kind of thing. And I do have my Lois's Choice that I planted up right here. It's only been a couple days and we're already starting to see leaves in there. So there's some, oh, sorry, the focus is going to be bad on that. But you know, these bare root, like once they're in the right environment, they just start taking off. So I love that about them. Now, I'm making a mess everywhere. So moving on to my video about Coleus, Danny Lynx writes, I absolutely love Coleus. I live in North Texas and they only died after Thanksgiving. One of the best things about Coleus is that it's such a good plant to teach a beginner gardener how to propagate. So I mentioned that a lot of people do propagate their Coleus. I think some people just put it in water and it roots. Other people have other ways of doing it. Again, that's not something I've tried. I really should, because people do seem to love doing it. And the other thing about Coleus, they don't like the cold. And I don't know if I mentioned that in the video or not. So as soon as you get close to freezing, they tend to die off. So even when they're in the upper 30s, sometimes that can really, they start looking pretty shabby after that. And one frost usually kills them unless they're protected somehow. So sometimes the Coleus that are growing under a tree or close to the house might not get hit, but usually cold temperatures take them right out. So they are not happy in cold, and they are not perennial. I did have somebody ask if they'd be perennial in their area. If you get freezing temperatures, they won't be perennial at all. And Mary Fetting writes, and the deer don't like them. And Michael Gray responds, I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing. For the most part, deer usually leave Coleus alone. I have had people tell me that they've had the deer nibble on their Coleus. A lot of times they might take a bite out of it. So for the most part, it's deer resistant, but you know how deer are. They just go for whatever they want when they want, and their taste can change. But for the most part, it's mostly a deer resistant. So it's a good one for that. And at the end of the video, I did mention that I was wearing gloves to hide my dirty fingers. And Terry D writes, I was looking at plants, not gloves, which is true. I should remember that. You guys aren't really that concerned about my hands. And then Kathleen writes, remember, if your hands and nails look a little dirty, you'll look like a gardener and not a hand model. And hey, those are words to live by. A gardener with clean hands, I always wonder, are they really getting their hands dirty, or are they just, faking it? Anyway, I'm okay with dirty fingers. Some of the other comments that have come in here, like this one from Michelle Hurst, who writes, this is off the topic of your video, but I wondered when you are expecting your bulb lawn to break, though. I live in southern Indiana, and we are starting to see bulbs in the landscape and containers emerge. I figure in the Upper Peninsula, yours might be a month or so later. In the Upper Peninsula, there's still snow on the ground, at least where we're at, so it's going to be a while. In fact, we had a big storm about a week ago. I think it was like 10 inches. I'm in the Lower Peninsula right now at my parents', but Liam's up there and he said he is just so tired of the snow. The storms just keep coming and keep coming. So it's going to be a while before the bulb lawn shows up. In fact, yours might be all done. All your bulbs might be done by the time mine blooms, but hey, that's okay. We're still going to enjoy it whenever it arrives. It's going to be a sure sign of spring. There's a question from Barbara who writes, when do you fertilize a flower from a store, not knowing when it was fertilized last and what fertilizer is best to use? So when you buy a new plant, fertilizer shouldn't be the first thing on your mind. Don't panic about that because there's not much you can do about how it was fertilized before. It's all about getting it on your regular schedule. So when you get it, if you're putting it in a container, just make sure that you've got good soil in your container. So if that's an annual, you're going to do that, then you're going to just put it on your regular fertilizer schedule. Like if that's every week, like if you do fertilizer Friday, then you just put it on your regular schedule. Don't worry about, something special. Now, sometimes people will add maybe some biotone fertilizer to their container, but if you have good soil, that's not a real high priority because there's probably nutrients in there. If it's like a perennial or a shrub or something that you're putting in the landscape, again, don't worry too much. You're gonna, plant it up, get it watered in. That's going to be more important than fertilizer at this point. So get it watered in so that it's really healthy. Make sure it doesn't dry out, but you also don't want to have it sitting in like a big soupy mess of mud. You want it to be able to, just kind of have normal moist soil and let it grow that way. And then again, put it on your normal fertilizer schedule. When it comes to perennials and shrubs, I don't do a lot of fertilizing. I will put usually compost on it in the spring and maybe a little time release fertilizer mixed in along the top. And then sometimes I'll go back in on certain plants, especially ones where I kind of feel like the soil might need a little extra, and I'll put some more time release in maybe in July or something like that. But otherwise, I don't do a lot of fertilizing with my perennials and shrubs. So good question, because it always feels like, you know, oh, we have to be on this special cycle for, you know, whatever the store is. No, that plant, you want it to adapt to your system and how you fertilize, so that it'll be performing at its best for you. Don't worry about what happened at the store before it. You know, you're going to do what's right for your yard, and you're going to treat it the best it can. So you're going to have good results that way. And Penny Arizio has another fertilizing question. Right off the bat, after you pot up your containers, do you use a 20-20-20 fertilizer? And if so, do you use that all growing season and or not? And when do you switch to something else? Okay, so when we're planting up like our annuals, so we're using plugs. I'll show you this plug right here. So we're planting up, sorry, I don't want to break the branch, so I got to push it from the bottom. So, you know, this is one of the plugs that we use, and we pot this up. So when we plant this up, we're not too worried about fertilizer right up front. So we do add fertilizer to our water, but when we're first planting, again, the soil that we're using for our plants, that's good soil. So there's fertilizer in that, so that's going to encourage the growth. It's more about appropriate watering when we first pot these up, using some time release. If you're putting them into, say, your grown containers, you know, like your mixed containers or something, that can help you. But really, it's about just getting on your regular schedule. So yes, here in the greenhouse, we use a 20-20-20. So we don't use an injector system. An injector system allows you to really be consistent with the amount of fertilizer or whatever other additives you need to put into your water. It measures it out so that you're getting the exact same dose with every spray of water. We actually have a holding tank, and so we mix it into the holding tank. Unfortunately, as we use it, it goes down and more water comes in. It does dilute it, but we've been doing it this way for 30 years. We kind of have a system where we're rotating what we water first and when we water, and we pay attention to it. So, you know, things are getting fertilizer, but we tend to use a low dose of fertilizer every single day here in the greenhouse. But like in your yard, fertilizing every single day, you know, that's a lot of work. So instead, for you know, someone at home, I'd say fertilize every week or every other week. That's going to be plenty for your annuals. But again, when you're first planting them out, you know, focus on making sure that it's watered in properly and the roots are developing well, because once the roots develop, then you can focus on all your fertilizer and all that kind of stuff. And also use good soil, use fresh soil, or if you're reusing soil, make sure that you're putting organic matter in there like compost, and make sure that there's fertilizer in there so that the plant has what it needs to be able to grow. Now, in one of the videos, I was starting seeds, and I had a pencil that I was using, and I kept licking the tip of the pencil and then sticking it in the dirt, and I was like, oh, probably not a good idea. And Marcia Wright writes, I think I have a great immune system because I ate dirt as a kid. We would just pull the veggies out of the ground or out of the dirt and eat them. And I think you're right. I mean, it is a case where, you know, we're so worried about this, you know, stuff. But if our vegetables are growing in this dirt, there probably isn't too much in this dirt that's going to hurt us. So that's a good thing. And then in that same video, Maureen Burke wrote, curious as to why you used perlite instead of vermiculite. Very good question, because I went to my local box store to buy vermiculite, and I asked for vermiculite, and they said, oh yeah, it's right over here, and they pointed to the perlite, and I did not pay any attention, and I was kind of zoning out. This was like, you know, weekend. I had been kind of doing kind of crazy stuff, getting everything in our online store up and going and getting ready for spring, and so my brain was not working, so I just grabbed it. And then when I was in the video, I remember thinking like, is this vermiculite? Like, this is so different. But then, you know, I didn't think about it. So yeah, that was just my mistake. So then, of course, after this comment came in, I was like, yeah, I really messed this one up. So then I looked online, and a lot of people use perlite as well. So it does help with the moisture and that kind of thing. So whew, I didn't kill anything, and my seeds are germinating quite nicely. So I'm very happy with my germination rates on all that stuff. And they're doing it with plenty of abuse, because it's been hard keeping them watered in the greenhouse here because it gets so hot during the day. So happy about that. Based on my YouTube analytics, about 10% of the people who watch my videos are from Canada. And one of those Canadian viewers named Peggy Ann has written, Corey, you know, I'm a huge fan of your channel and hope this isn't going to cause offense. This is a few words to all of our American friends who support Canada's sovereignty. Please get out there and use your feet and your voice to send a strong message. Corey, please know that I don't expect you to respond, as any reply from you may cause offense, and I don't want that. So I'm not going to get into any of this, are tariffs good or bad, or are some of these trade things and some of this stuff stuff that's going on in the world. I don't want to get into all that, but I have seen some effects that some of these changes are having on the industry, at least in the short term. I do not know what the long-term effects are going to be. They may be positive, they may be negative. I am not the person to even have any clue how that is going to play out, but in the short term, like right now, things that we need to watch out for or be aware of, I guess, and how I want you guys to maybe have some awareness in the plant industry is, like, I see a lot of people, my friends on Facebook, are posting things like, hey, if you buy American, the tariffs aren't going to affect you. And that's not necessarily true, especially in like agriculture, and whether it's food or it's ornamental. What people might not realize is that a lot of the resources that we use for our fertilizers and our soils come from Canada, especially like potash and peat are two really big things that Canada supplies for us. And I've had people say like, well, just find an American source for that. Well, unfortunately, we don't have an infrastructure in place, and I don't know what our resources are for those things as well. But that's not in place right now. So in the short term, it's a bit of a struggle and a jumble for people in the industry to be able to get like the soils and the fertilizers that they need. I know one of the big plant suppliers, Jolly Farmer, they do supply a lot of plants to people kind of in New England and kind of that, you know, maybe upper New York kind of area. And I know that they, because of tariffs, had to send a letter out to their customers in the US saying, hey, the tariffs are supposed to start tomorrow. We're going to do everything we can to kind of make up for this. We're going to eat some of this cost, but there is going to be an increase in the price of your plants because of the tariffs. So that was a direct effect. So just be aware that some of those things are going to cost a little bit more. The other thing that I would recommend for you, like as a regular consumer, if you're thinking of getting any hard goods, especially, you know, because a lot of the hard goods in the garden industry are made in places like China and Mexico, and also maybe a lot of things are in the Philippines and Vietnam as well. I see a lot of those things coming in from there, but especially China and Mexico, if you're planning to get any items that come from those areas, it'd be a good idea to get them now, because a lot of garden centers have purchased those items. They already have them in stock. And with us not knowing for sure what the tariff situation is going to be, there is a good chance that the prices of those things are going to go up. So buying them earlier in the season, you might kind of insulate yourself from some of that price increase, because some people, I think, are also inflating some of the prices in anticipation of that, which I'm not a big fan of that, because especially if they have the product in hand and it's already paid for, a little shifty maybe to raise the price. But then the other argument for that is, hey, it's about value. It's not about what you paid. It's about what people value it at. So there's an argument both ways. So anyway, the other thing that, or the other way that it's affecting things is we just got a call from one of our plant suppliers. She called and said, look, you guys, I think we need to move your ship date up a little bit. And we were kind of like, well, why? That's kind of strange. They've never really done that before. And she said, we're facing a labor shortage right now because a lot of their employees are from Mexico. A lot of them have left. They just don't want to be there. And these are legally working people here. So a lot of them are like temporary migrant workers, people who come in just for the season. A lot of them have said, you know what, not worth it. I don't want to risk it. I don't want to be in that situation. So it's so unusual to have one of our companies contact us like this and say, labor is an issue. I mean, we saw this in 2020 where labor was a potential issue and things were kind of sluggish and slow and things were kind of going crazy. But to have it happen just under normal conditions, it's a little bit frightening. Now, hopefully over the next 6 months or year, we're going to have a better sense of what's going on and all these companies can compensate for any of the changes they have to make. But I mean, we're feeling these effects right now. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that also could potentially delay some of the things that, you know, we're getting. So we might not get our product in on time, and we might be paying more for it. So I'm just putting that out there. I do not want to get into any kind of debate or big conversation about it. So if you're right now thinking about what you want to type in the comment section, don't waste your time, because there are better ways for you to express that. So, you know, take that energy and, you know, talk to your representative, whether you're for or against, or talk to your friends and family and educate them in things that you know about this. Putting a comment down here it's going to disappear, because people don't really read a lot of the comments anyway. That's why I do these videos, so that I can have the conversation out there in the open, but it's just going to get lost. So don't waste your time leaving a comment on that kind of stuff here. Find another outlet. And if you do leave a comment, just be nice. And hey, remember, Peggy Ann's a real person too. So be nice to Peggy Ann as well. So I'm putting that out there, and just that's all I'm going to say about it, but I do want you guys to be aware that there could be an impact on the plant industry and the gardening industry, and so don't be surprised. And my advice to you is buy sooner rather than later, because with the uncertainty, there could be issues with prices and availability. Katerina writes, hello, you mentioned that you are getting plant deliveries now. I'm just curious, why do you guys not grow plants in the nursery yourself? Wouldn't it be cheaper for you to do it rather than ordering them from somebody else? Seems like it's very common in the USA to order plants from other growers. I wonder, why is that? In my country, pretty much all nurseries grow everything from seeds. That's a great question, and there's a couple of reasons why we don't. First of all, we do have cold winters here, and heating these greenhouses becomes it gets expensive, and so do a lot of the other costs with propagation. I'm also going to note that there are people who are really good at propagating, and there's people that are really good at growing. We tend to be better at growing things. So for us to get stuff started, and usually it's from a little bit warmer climate, even if it's just a zone south from us in our own state, it really does make a difference. And also it allows us to focus on what we're good at. I mean, we're already pretty tight on staff. Like, we don't have a lot of staffing resources as well. So to do propagation and then do everything else that we're doing, it's just a little bit overwhelming. And a lot of the plants are legally protected as far as propagation, so you have to have a license to propagate them. So we either have to pay for the license, or we have to wait until their plant patent expires before we can grow some of these plants legally and selling them. And we don't want to put ourselves in any kind of legal jeopardy as well. So for us, by getting the plants in like as plugs, it lets us, number one, focus on the stuff that we're good at. Number two, it does give us access to more varieties as well. Also, a lot of these varieties that we carry, they're started from vegetative cuttings, not from seed. And that allows, it kind of assures that the plants are all genetically the same, whereas with seeds, you don't always get that. A lot of great comments came in from my video about the new annuals that are coming to market this season. Shell Plum wrote, I planted something pretty close to the elegant feather Eupatorium you showed in a pot downtown in front of the bank. I put it in the back of the pot with petunias and million bells. It was aggressive, and the community began calling it the Grinch plant. It received several haircuts. I love that you're calling it the Grinch plant, and that was like a natural name that came out, because when I look at that plant, that is what it reminds me of. It's got that lime green color that the Grinch has, and it does have a little bit of a Dr. Seuss look to it. So it's pretty cool. And I'm glad you probably grew a similar variety. You may even have grown that variety. It doesn't sound like you knew exactly the name of it. So good to know, and also great to know that it can handle constant trimming, because it does seem to be one that gets pretty vigorous, and containing it might be kind of important on that one. Let's see. Also had a question from Suze Lou. What fantastic videos. I watched them both twice and took screenshots of annuals I want to get for my containers. And that's the reason why I do these videos now, because I want to make sure that you guys have a chance to kind of absorb what you've watched. And I love the fact that you guys make lists and take screenshots. And the only thing is, I realize how hard it can be sometimes to find some of these new varieties, or maybe some of these unusual varieties. So that can be a little frustrating. But remember, going to your local garden center, talking to them about some of these plants that you're interested in, they might be able to steer you in the direction of something else, or something that they're focusing on, because hey, I am not the end all with great varieties. I think every greenhouse and nursery has their favorites, and it's important that you get a relationship going with your local greenhouse or nursery so that you know what those are, and gives you also a sense for what's going to do well in your area. Harbor Blooms writes, you got the pronunciation of Abutilon correct on the last attempt. So that was a new plant to me, and I was having trouble pronouncing it, but I managed to get it right, I guess. She says it's Abutilon. So anyway, glad I at least got one of my pronunciations. I tried it 4 times, so hey, I was bound to get one, right? Meanwhile, C.S. Linden writes, it is so nice to hear about plants that are not just proven winners varieties. And then Chris Lee writes, thanks for reviewing other plants besides proven winners. So part of the reason why you're probably seeing a lot of videos with proven winner plants is because Proven Winners does like these big launches. That's kind of part of their marketing plan, is introducing you to the new varieties, and they'll work with a lot of content creators to get those new varieties out there. They also do a lot of marketing. So they'll do traditional marketing where they're doing billboards and magazine ads. They also do a lot of, I guess, public relations. So you might see articles in different types of magazines or other publications as well. So it really comes down to, they put the time and money into getting those varieties out there. So that's part of the reason why you see so much of the Proven Winners information. And a lot of these other companies, they rely on the growers to be able to put that information out there. And that's kind of the old school way of doing things. They do their own videos and they have social media and that type of thing, but Proven Winners has kind of cornered the market on some of the new marketing, and that's part of the reason why I think they're so front of mind when this kind of stuff kind of comes up. So, I mean, I do include a lot of the Proven Winner plants, especially the ones I'm most excited about, but there are so many other varieties out there that I want you to know about, that I'll continue telling you about Proven Winners and others, because I think it's worth you guys knowing. And I also like being able to compare the Proven Winner plants to some of these other varieties as well, because a lot of these other varieties can kind of get lost in the shuffle, because when our social media feeds are so full of certain plants, the trending plants, you miss out on a couple things. So I hope to be kind of the other source of information for you. And then Doro wrote, are petchoas better with insects? I get a lot of Petunia budworms, or whatever they're called, as well as aphids. Now, I'm not sure. I haven't had any problems with petchoas. You know what? I have seen aphids on petchoas. I think petchoas are going to be very similar to your petunias as far as, I'm going to guess the budworms probably go for them too. So you're probably still going to have to spray BT on them. And as far as aphids, they do go for it. So petchoas, I don't think have a higher pest resistance than petunias do. So they might not be the right choice for you, although it'd be nice if they could come up with some petunias and petchoas that were at least resistant to budworm. We haven't gotten budworm up by us yet. I'm wondering if they're on their way or if we're too cold for them. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a matter of time, but they're just miserable. They eat the flowers, and but we do get earwigs, which do kind of the same thing, and they're a pain. So I understand what frustrates you here. Lisa Dollinger wrote, the blue vein tea petunia is interesting, and I think the elegant feather Eupatorium and the profusion zinnia would make a great combo with the golden leopard canna from the last video. Lisa, I think you may have just identified one of the driveway pots that we need to do. I think that golden leopard with that blue petunia, I think this would be a really nice combination. I think they could work really well together. I'm putting that in the brain, and I'll start playing with it, because I think that'd be a really good one. So that will be the Lisa combo, we'll call it. How's that? And Teresa Garden wrote, have you heard of the Firelight Petunia? I think you mean Firefly Petunia. And yes, I have. That's the glow in the dark one. I actually purchased 3. I think I should do a separate video on that, because I have some opinions on it. It's a very interesting plant. It really does glow in the dark, but it comes with, I guess I would want to tell you about what to watch out for with that petunia. So I'll do a separate video. Maybe I can get it up next week so that I can tell you more about what I thought of the Firefly. There's also been a couple comments of people who are interested in coming to visit us. Hey, you are definitely welcome. We'd love to have you, but I do kind of want to, I guess, set your expectations a little bit. So we open to the public on May 1st, and we are not one of those big operations. We're not one of those like giant garden centers that you walk in with the giant glass house and, you know, all the pretty garden furniture everywhere, and, you know, and the bird watching area over there, and the, you know, whatever on that side. We're really more about the plants, and we are a family run business, so we're not super big, but we are unique in our own way. And like, I think there were some people from, what was it, Southern Illinois or Indiana, who commented that's a long trip to make up here. So I hope you have other things to see when you're up here. We are about just over an hour from like Mackinac Island, or the ferry to Mackinac Island. So that's one of our popular tourist destinations in this area. It's a beautiful island where they don't have any cars. It's all horses and carriages and types of things like that. So, you know, do come and visit us. You're welcome to be here. I'm here until like May 20 something, and then I start my travel schedule. So if you come, make sure you let us know that you're here, and I'll try to at least say hi to you. So we'd love to have you. But again, you know, I don't want you guys to come here thinking that, I don't know, we're going to have everything available, because that's the other thing. Like, we are strong on annuals when we open in May, right up through almost June 1st. It will start, our inventory starts to dwindle towards the end of June, and then we move more into perennials and shrubs. And so earlier in the season, our inventory is stronger. Later in the season, you know, we do get more things in throughout the season, but there'll be certain things that we just won't be able to have anymore. So just want to put that out there. We do have a website as well, and if you go to the nettasnursery.com website, you can see what plants we're carrying. So if you wanted to just, if there maybe was a certain plant you're looking for, you can see if we're planning to carry it. We don't update that inventory, so if we sell out of a plant, we're not able to keep up on it. We just have the list up there. So anyway, sorry to keep going on about that, but I get a little bit of anxiety when I think, oh gosh, if someone comes a really long way for us just because they watch my video, oh, I hope they're not disappointed. I'm sure you guys love plants, so as long as we have plants, you'll be happy, right? That's how it works, right? Corey, don't be anxious. It's fine. Okay, so that's all my questions for right now. Thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate it. Continue to comment in the videos because I do read them and I try to answer as many as I can, especially if there's specific questions that I'm able to answer, but sometimes I get a little caught up in other things and I might miss a comment or two, so please forgive me if I do. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.